Hi everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we decode the confusing language of corporate filings. Today, Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines is dropping some news, and let's just say it's about making some financial commitments that could be as solid as a rock or as shaky as a Jenga tower. So what are we looking at today? Well, it's a Form 8K, which is like a company's urgent bulletin to the world. Think of it as a stop the presses kind of announcement for anything big that's happening outside of their regular scheduled reports. And the big news from Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines, or FHLB Des Moines as we'll call them, is all about debt. Before we dive in, if you love getting these straight up, no nonsense financial breakdowns, make sure you subscribe. And hey, we've got a killer Discord community where we dissect these reports even further. You can find the link right down in the description below. Now, FHLB Des Moines, they get most of their money, their funding, as they say, from selling something called consolidated obligations. Imagine these as IOUs like bonds and discount notes that they sell to investors in the big money markets. The really important thing here is that these aren't just FHLB Des Moines promises. They're like a team effort. The regulations say that all 11 federal home loan banks are on the hook together for these debts. If one bank falters, another can be forced to step in and cover the debt. It's a bit like shouting tag you're it in a financial game of tag. Now, this report mainly points us to something called Schedule A. This schedule is where they list all the bonds and discount notes that they've committed to issuing. They're basically saying, hey, big money deals are happening. This list includes debts where FHLB Des Moines is the main borrower, but also any debts they might have taken over responsibility for from another federal home loan bank. They're focusing on the debts that will take over a year to pay back, the longer term commitments. This next bit is a little bit of a disclaimer, and it's important. They're telling us that they can change how they report this stuff whenever they want. This means that if you're trying to track their total debt from report to report, it might be a little tricky because they can tweak the rules of the game as they go. Also, this Schedule A doesn't tell us the whole story about all their financial dealings. For instance, they might be using fancy financial tools like interest rate swaps to manage their money. These aren't included here, so what we're seeing is just one piece of a much larger financial puzzle. They're essentially saying this is important info, but it's not the only important info. And here's another crucial point. The numbers they show on this Schedule A are what they call at par. This is like the face value of the debt. It doesn't include things like discounts or premiums, which are common in how debt is actually priced and reported in their official financial statements. So, while it gives you an idea of the size of these deals, it's not the exact same figure you'd see in their regular earnings reports. It's like looking at the menu price versus the final bill after all the taxes and tips. Alright, so that's the main gist of the filing. It's all about these consolidated obligations, which are essentially how they raise a huge chunk of their money. The real meat of the information, the list of these debt issuances, is in something called Exhibit 99-1, which is actually Schedule A. And finally, the report is signed off by Tapas Panda, who holds the title of Assistant Treasurer. This is pretty standard procedure, showing who officially authorized this filing. The date on the signature is September 3, 2025, which is interesting because the report itself is dated August 27, 2025. This indicates the filing happened a few days after the report's official date. Now let's cut through the financial jargon and talk about what this actually means for Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines. They're essentially telling us they're actively borrowing large sums of money by issuing bonds and notes. This is their primary way of operating and funding their business. The fact that all 11 federal home loan banks are jointly responsible for these debts is a key risk and also a key strength. It means that if one bank struggles, the others are there to back them up. But it also means that every bank is tied to the fortunes of the entire group. The mention of Schedule A and the details about how they report these issuances mean we're getting a snapshot of future debt commitments. Investors and analysts will be poring over this to understand the bank's upcoming funding needs and the overall debt structure. It's not about reporting booming profits or massive losses in this specific filing, but rather about transparency in their debt-heavy funding strategy. Looking at this from a high level, FHLB Des Moines, like all federal home loan banks, plays a critical role in providing liquidity to member institutions, primarily banks and credit unions. Their ability to access capital markets through these consolidated obligations is paramount to their success. This filing confirms they are actively doing just that. So what's my take? Well, FHLB Des Moines is clearly focused on its core business model of borrowing and lending. The joint and several liability across the 11 FHLB banks is a significant factor. It provides a safety net, but also means that systemic risk within the FHLB system could impact any individual bank, including Des Moines. The disclosures about their reporting methods suggest a need for vigilance from anyone monitoring their debt levels closely, as the presentation of information can change. The main opportunity here is their role in supporting housing finance and community development lending. The risks are tied to capital market volatility and the overall economic health of the nation, which can affect their ability to borrow at favourable rates and the creditworthiness of their members. In essence, they are conduits for capital and their performance is closely linked to the financial system's stability. This filing doesn't give us exciting growth numbers, but it confirms activity in their fundamental operations. It's a report of action in the debt markets indicating ongoing business. Alright, that's our breakdown of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines' latest filing. What's your take on these debt issuances and what they signal for the bank's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more of these corporate deep dives. And hey, don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. It's where we really get into the nitty-gritty. Thanks for watching. See you next time.